The Director General of the World Trade Organization has predicted a bumpy road for global planning at the opening of the 12th WTO Ministerial Conference. The World Trade Organization is the highest level meeting in several years, with government ministers from around the globe preparing to discuss pandemic preparedness and rising food insecurity against the backdrop of Russia's war in Ukraine. Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Director General of the WTO, said that the Geneva-based trade body needs reform and hoped the four-day meeting involving dozens of ministers from the body's member countries can progress towards reducing inequalities and ensuring fair and free trade.
But let me be clear. Even landing that one or two will not be an easy road. The road will be bumpy and rocky. There may be a few landmines on the way. We'll have to navigate those landmines and see how we can successfully land one or two deliverables. When I said that the road to delivery will be bumpy and rocky, that's also one of the things I was thinking about. As you know, inevitably, the war in Ukraine impacted the way we were working. So for about 3 to 4 weeks, it took us time to find a modality. This is a negotiating forum, so we had to find ways to negotiate, bearing in mind the sensitivities of all countries. We found it. We were able to negotiate in small groups, bilaterally, bring all those results together. And we hope to be able to do that here. And we've tried to find modalities where ministers can all express their views about the current conjuncture we're in. And I hope that will be a possible way to be able to deal with whatever sentiments ministers have on the Ukraine crisis. But can we 100% predict everything that will happen? No. We might have some issues that happen, but I think all in all, we've tried to prepare to be able to navigate as much as we can. There's a war, which is an international security crisis, actually, because it's impacting beyond Ukraine and Russia. We have a food crisis. We have geopolitical tensions between members and so on. They are all on offer. They'll be talked about. That's what I mean. I think ministers will have the opportunity to really discuss these issues. We have a session that is called The Challenges Confronting the Multilateral Trading System.
All right, we're now joined by Arise Senior Correspondent John Cookson, who is on boots on the ground in Geneva. John, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Any chance of a breakthrough on one of the main agenda items of the conference, especially around the food crisis?
Hi, good morning from Geneva. And yes, I think there could be a breakthrough on one particular issue. Right now, they're debating something called TRIPS, which is intellectual property rights on vaccines to treat COVID. Now, what India and South Africa want is for developing countries like Nigeria to have access, total access to all vaccines, so more jabs can be put into arms and more lives can be saved, and to restrict the expansion of COVID, which is still a scourge in the world. Now, they have the backing of no less than the Pope, who tweeted his support yesterday. That debate has been going on all morning. We're expecting ministers to come out in about half an hour and tell us what they've decided. These meetings are very much always about compromise, and what I think that might be agreed is that the patent for the COVID vaccine be allowed to certain countries only, certain countries excluded, certain countries, those being, for example, China and India, to allow countries to develop their own vaccine based on the patents that have been obtained in the West in countries like England and America, and for that to be a one-off, that it be restricted just to the COVID vaccine, not to the other drugs which are used to cover the aftermath of COVID, and there'll be no production of those vaccines without the consent of the manufacturer, like Pfizer. So that's the compromise that I think we're looking at to be announced in half an hour or so from now. It could have all fallen apart. We're not allowed into the conference room. We can't hear the debate. It's not sent out live to us. We journalists are here confined to the atrium behind the conference room. So we'll just have to wait and see how that debate has gone. As I say, we should know in about half an hour or so on what's actually been decided on COVID vaccines, but hugely important to developing nations to be able to develop their own vaccine and to use the patents that have already been produced in the West.
Great stuff, John. So that's on vaccines, and thank you for bringing us up to date. What about the food crisis that that the world is facing right now, the supply chain bottlenecks and so on? Is there any talk on that, on alleviating that?
Yes, they'll be talking about that today. The global food crisis, of course, sparked by the conflict in Ukraine following the Russian invasion. And it's had a huge impact, of course, throughout the world, especially in developing nations in Africa. There's vital wheat, maize, and also sunflower oil still stacked up in ports in Ukraine, stuck there because of Russian warships preventing those ships leaving the Black Sea and heading to the Mediterranean, where the vital food supplies can be distributed. So what the WTO is trying to do is to try to get some compromise. Again, we're talking about compromise here, on allowing the World Food Programme to buy up vast quantities of this grain and for it to be distributed without tariffs to those countries that need it. It's a big ask, but the Director General, who we heard a short time ago, is determined to try and make this WTO gathering work and for something concrete to come out of it, so you can be sure that she'll be working behind the scenes to try to get some kind of progress on this world food crisis.
Thanks, John. Now, I mean, you said that this is based on a lot of compromise. It's pretty tight. What happens if agreements are not reached? Well, what then happens? Okay,
I'm losing your part of the conversation a little bit. What I think you were asking me is what happens if there is no breakthrough here. Well, very much the reputation of the WTO and the Director General, Dr. Ngugi, is very much on the line here. The WTO haven't met for almost 5 years. Meanwhile, the world has moved on. Countries are trading with each other or not trading with each other. There are tensions throughout the world, especially between, for example, America and China. And if there is no breakthrough today and in coming days, this really is a bad sign for world trade, that suddenly countries will be going their own way in the world rather than this togetherness of globalization, which makes trade so much better. And of course, with increased trade, it increases the value of the livelihoods of people in countries. It lifts wages. So it's vital that there is some kind of show of unity by 103 countries which are represented here in Geneva. If it doesn't happen, one has to question the value of the WTO itself, and it really is make or break for the organization.
John, final question, and I hope you can hear me. Because there's a war and countries like Indonesia are banning exports of oil palm and so on, can it be understood that the World Trade Organization is limited if an agreement is not reached because of the existing geopolitical situation?
Very much so. I mean, it's all about compromise. It's all about managing the expectations of nations who have done private deals with each other. For example, on fishing, there's a debate during the course of this week of ending subsidies for fishing, which has led to the overfishing of the seas, and countries like India are saying, well, we don't want subsidies to end, even though some of this fishing is illegal, using sometimes forced labour, and there's a big political issue there for India, for example, who want the subsidies to remain in place. So it's all about talking to each other, compromising, horse trading, if you like, The Director General, we know, is good at that, so a lot rests on her shoulders to try and pull something out of the bag and for some major breakthrough to happen here at the WTO in Geneva. She's the best person for the job. Of course, twice Finance Minister in Nigeria, also Foreign Minister, 20 years at the World Bank. She's got a lot of experience, and she was appointed because of her prowess on the political scene.
All right, Senior Correspondent John Cookson, boots on the ground in Geneva. Thank you so much for bringing us up to date. Very, very testy, trying period for the World Trade Organization. We'll see what happens there.